Lewis Hamilton's brief Ferrari career to date has fallen short of expectations. 5 events in, there have been several false dawns as what appeared to be breakthroughs have not carried over in a car he admits he's not gelling with. What's more, after a promising start, things have been getting worse, not better. Now, it's still early days. The first 5 Grand Prix were crammed into just 6 weekends, and Hamilton's performances will surely get better with time. But after the encouraging start in the season-opening Australian Grand Prix, which was followed up by a first Ferrari victory in the China Sprint, Hamilton's had an increasingly frustrating time. He's been clearly the second best Ferrari driver, and that's to be expected, given Charles Leclerc is in his 7th season with the team, and Hamilton is traversing a steep learning curve to adapt. But the qualifying gap is expanding, not narrowing. And that's the concern. Even in China, where Hamilton outqualified Leclerc in both sprint and main qualifying, he was a step slower in the main race. And that's despite Leclerc picking up front wing end plate damage after brushing his teammate's right rear wheel on the first lap. As Hamilton said of the car in Bahrain, it just feels so alien. And while he's accepted that he needs to adapt his style, having struggled to change the car to make it work the way he wants, the question is if that is possible. However, the lessons he thought he learned in Bahrain proved to be one of the false dawns he's faced this season, preceding his worst weekend of the year in Saudi Arabia. The first of those came in China. Hamilton finished 10th after starting 8th on his debut for Ferrari in Australia, with the team's failure to bring him in when the rain returned late in the race costing him at least a couple of places. On paper, it was nothing special, but it was a solid start, and the main time lost to Leclerc was in the 2 brisk right-handers at turn 6 and turn 13. There, he consistently carried less speed into the corner than his teammates, but there were other parts of the lap where he was every bit Leclerc's equal. Then came the high watermark of China. There, on a front-limited circuit that hadn't yet fully gripped up, he claimed pole position and led the sprint from start to finish to claim his first Ferrari F1 race victory. He followed that up by beating Leclerc in qualifying proper by a 1/10 of a second. It appeared the breakthrough had been made, and earlier than expected. In the race, he struggled for pace, lapping slower than Leclerc's Ferrari, and Hamilton suspected that was down to a setup error. And although both Ferraris were excluded from the race, Hamilton for excess plank wear and Leclerc for being underweight, there at least appeared to be understandable reasons for the race day struggle. Yet when Hamilton moved on to Japan, he struggled with understeer in qualifying and didn't show anything like the pace of Leclerc in the race. He suggested he had built sufficient understanding to diverge in setup compared to Leclerc, although it was to no avail. After the race, he also made oblique remarks about a deficit in his car, costing him just over a 1/10 a lap that he suggested didn't affect Leclerc's. The suspicion was this related to the ride height compromises Ferrari had to make across both cars thanks to suffering from excessive bottoming out. However, he refused to elaborate. But this set the scene for the next false dawn. The Ferrari floor upgrade, introduced in Bahrain, meant an increase in downforce, even though Hamilton again had difficulties. He qualified only 9th, struggling in the high-speed corners with the familiar concerns about high-speed rear stability that afflicted him at times with Mercedes. While he was much closer to Leclerc in the slower stuff, it added up to a deficit of over half a second and led to Hamilton admitting he was not doing a good job. But his pace in the second stint of the race was encouraging. On his second set of medium tyres, he showed good speed and suggested he'd made a breakthrough in terms of driving style. But despite his optimism about being able to apply those lessons in Saudi Arabia, the weekend proved bitterly disappointing. His minimum speed was markedly slower than Leclerc in most corners on Friday. He slumped to over half a second off in qualifying and only escaped elimination in Q2 by 0.07 of a second. Unlike in Bahrain, there was no boost from the race. He finished 7th, but described it as horrible, saying the car lacked grip and balance, and he was fighting it every corner. Although he banked some more points, his best finish in a Grand Prix so far is 5th in Bahrain. His tally of 31 points compared to Leclerc's 47 isn't bad, but his performance level and the trend are concerning. Hamilton's struggles in Saudi Arabia were down to a number of factors. The confidence in the rear end in high-speed corners wasn't there, while in qualifying he also struggled in the slower stuff. Hamilton's old ways, which worked phenomenally well, can be summed up as a tendency to brake late and hard. This loads up the front tyres as the car pitches forward, introducing the car to the corner fractionally before he has to, then using the rear rotation to help turn the car without it over-rotating into a slide. It's a difficult style to perfect, but one where Hamilton's precision and feel allowed him to thrive. The current generation of ground effect cars run low, with very limited ride height movement because of the need to hold the car in the right window aerodynamically, and don't respond well to this style of driving, partly because of the relatively small amount of pitch and roll. That played a part in a gap that appeared to be more like 2 to 3 tenths early in qualifying, ballooning, with Leclerc among the fastest to adapt to the challenges of these cars, modifying his braking style immediately, something that then teammate Carlos Sainz took some time to get his head round in the first half of 2022. Hamilton is going through a process that his teammate has long since nailed. To complicate that, he's having to adapt to using Brembo brakes, having long used carbon industry products at Mercedes, and Hamilton has always been sensitive to braking feel. With his time lost to Leclerc around the whole lap in recent weekends rather than in specific corners, and down to a combination of factors rather than any single one, it's clear there's still a long way to go for Hamilton.
Ever fancied owning a piece of one of Ayrton Senna's Formula 1 cars? Even better, ever fancied owning a piece of one of Ayrton Senna's Formula 1 cars that you can wear on your wrist? Thanks to Danish specialist watch manufacturer Rek, you can own a timepiece featuring original parts from Senna's 1986 Lotus 98T, chassis number 4. Rek watches spent 2 years working with classic Team Lotus to reforge the original aluminium plenum tubes from the car to form the outer chapter rings for this exclusive watch. The car they used, Chassis 4, was driven by Senna for the last 8 races of the 1986 World Championship, which went to the wire in Australia and ended with Senna's bitter rival Alain Prost champion after an iconic and dramatic puncture for Nigel Mansell's Williams. Senna's car, the last black and gold John Player liveried turbocharged Lotus, is now privately owned and still racing to this day in historic motorsport. Nods to that iconic F1 livery can be seen in the watch's black and gold colour tones and the large number 12 skeletonized on the rotor, while the movement backplate decoration mimics the turbo Renault engine from that car. Because each timepiece uses original materials, the collection is strictly limited to just 989 individually numbered watches, which are exclusively available through rekwatches.com. You currently get a 15% pre-order discount when ordering and an additional 10% discount when using code THERACE, so follow the link in the description and hurry if you want to claim your very own piece of Ayrton Senna's F1 legacy.
All of this explains why Hamilton has not made gains, but the other half of the equation is that Leclerc has managed to get the Ferrari working as well as he can. This means that after struggling early on, he's become increasingly comfortable. In Japan, he spoke of having achieved a deeper understanding of how to get the best out of the car, and that appeared to pay off, with improved pace relative to Hamilton at Suzuka, and also in the following events in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, primarily in qualifying. The trouble is, the Ferrari is even at its best still 2 or 3 tenths off the pace. That means Leclerc has only once qualified in the top 3, in Bahrain, where he was 3rd fastest and promoted to 2nd thanks to George Russell's grid penalty. All of this means he's taken a step away from Hamilton, which has widened the gap between the two. Not that he's happy, as he said after qualifying in Saudi Arabia, to end up 4th after putting in a good lap is not good enough. But come the race, he was fast and claimed Ferrari's first podium finish of the year with 3rd. That it took Leclerc several races to get his head round how to extract the best from the Ferrari is, in some ways, encouraging for Hamilton. He now has the chance to learn from his teammates and adapt, and the 2-week gap between Saudi Arabia and Miami is the ideal chance to work on that. It's also clear that the Ferrari is still a slightly tricky car, which it has been since the start of the year. And that means there's plenty of room for improvement from Hamilton. He's commented on Leclerc's comfort with oversteer, but most concerningly, after the race in Saudi Arabia, he describes his way of driving as not looking massively different to Leclerc's in the data, it's just he's slower in the corners. He's still going through the process of settling into the team, but team principal Fred Vasseur has shrugged off all questions about Hamilton's struggles and says he supports his new driver 2000%. That mathematically dubious statement indicates he still expects the full storms to stop and Hamilton to make progress. Next up is Miami, but speaking to F1 TV after the race in Jeddah, Hamilton shrugged off the suggestion that the 2-week gap before the next Grand Prix will be a chance to reflect and put plans in place to change things. He said that wouldn't make any difference. Any driver would be concerned with the gap of just over half a second Hamilton had to his teammate in qualifying in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. But with the stylistic challenges, the need to adapt, the lack of confidence and the time required to build ever more familiarity with the array of tools available to refine the car dynamics, that's time that can melt away as things come together. If, that is, he can adapt. If Hamilton gets to halfway through the season and this pattern is continuing to characterise his weekends, that's the point at which bigger questions have to be asked about whether he's facing a Daniel Ricciardo-style struggle to adapt to the demands of this generation of cars. For now, this is still about the growing pains of his new partnership with Ferrari, but Hamilton will hope his comment about potentially being stuck in his ways and struggling ever to change in Saudi Arabia is nothing more than a throwaway remark.